Welcome back to Lewis's bug. As you can see, I've got it on the ramp in the workshop, and it was pretty evident after the test drive with Lewis that he does require really good brakes. So that was what I was looking at today. I've stripped the brakes out so I could have a good look, and this is what I found. On the front, this Beetle's obviously got discs and calipers. Now, as you can see, there's quite a moist patch on the disc itself where the car's been parked up overnight. And this is brake fluid. This is brake fluid seeping out of our leaky brake caliper. So the seals in here in the piston have worn and is allowing brake fluid pass. So we need to change that. The brake flexi hoses look probably as old as the car. Probably not that bad, but as you can see, they're not very nice, quite rusty. Don't know how old they are. They should be changed every 7 or so years, something like that. So we're going to change those as well. So on the front, I'm going to do a pair of brake calipers. They come complete with brake pads, actually, the ones that we sell. Flexi hoses, and then we're going to check out the rear. So the rears weren't too bad. We've got new drums and discs all around because the pattern's been changed for the wheels. So it's got a Porsche stud pattern now rather than the VW one. But what I had noticed is we've got one leaky wheel cylinder. It's had a brand new cylinder put on the other side, but not this side. So it's always a good thing to practice. If you're changing wheel cylinders, do them in pairs, and then you've got half a chance of them both lasting as long as each other. Normally, if you change one, you can bet your bottom dollar that the one you haven't changed is going to start leaking, like this one. As you can see, it's quite moist in there. It should be dry as a bone behind there. So he needs to be changed. Luckily, it hasn't leaked on the shoes, so we can save the shoes and use those. But what I am going to do is put a lick of paint on the drums and on the front brake discs, because they haven't been painted, and they went all horrible and brown and rusty. And I think we should just smart them up a bit. So while we're apart, that's what we're going to do. Go scrub all the rust down and give them a little lick of paint. I'm going to check the rear flexi hoses. This has got some writing on it, but I can't actually see the date. They all have a date of manufacture. But I can't see the date on that one, and it looks pretty old, so we're going to change that for sure. And this side isn't even a matched one. That looks like a different make again, so that may have been on there even longer. Yeah, all the flexi hoses for sure, and then we know we're starting from fresh, all equal. Also, when you're changing flexi hoses, do them in pairs with the same make or manufacturer, as the holes inside of the flexi pipes can vary slightly, which can deliver different amounts of fluid to the brakes and cause a slightly uneven braking. So it's always good to replace them in match pairs. But we're going to do all of them. But the one good thing with these brakes, it's already had a brand new master cylinder by the looks of it. It looks like that master cylinder was fitted fairly recently, so that's cool. So we've got a good master cylinder to start with. And by the time we finish, we'll have a cracking set of brakes. That's the front brakes completed. The really nice thing about these front brake calipers is they come complete with the brake pads and the pins in them ready to fit. Awesome, so it's a really easy job. Just mount it, put the pipe on, job done. And new flexi hoses on the front also. So it's time to get to the back and finish off the rear brakes. First job we're going to do is get these drums painted actually. As you can see, I've scuffed them off ready. We're going to put a lick of paint on them so they don't look brown and horrible. But this has got to be the first job because they need to dry before I put them on. that's all our new brake components fitted, so I think now it's time to sort of get some fluid through and bleed the brakes. First off, I'm going to fill up our reservoir, and then I'm going to go around and gravity bleed. So I'm going to open all the bleed nipples, allow the fluid to flow through the system, and then I'm going to get Nick, who's behind the camera at the moment, to get in and help me bleed the brakes using the foot pedal. Well, that's the brakes completed. So big thanks to Nick for doing the brake bleeding. That was perfect, helped me out. But I understand Nick's now got to pop off. So fortunately, I've got my phone. So I'm going to continue filming on here for the next bit. I did a quick charge check on Lewis's Beetle, and I noticed a few inconsistent readings once we started loading up, putting headlights on and so forth. So I was checking through it and I found a bit of a bad earth connection. So the main engine earth itself goes from our gearbox here round to our chassis. Unfortunately, this one was bolted from the gearbox, but on this side of our polyurethane mount. So it was trying to rely on a reasonably good connection through the bolt itself. And it was bolted to a nylock, so not the greatest of connections. So I'm going to take it off, give it a clean up, and get the loop going from the gearbox right the way round to the other side. We've got a definite improvement on our charging side of things now, so a more consistent voltage going back to the battery. What I did notice while I was doing that was the oil pressure gauge was flicking around some. We weren't getting a very constant reading from that. So that could have been down to the earth, but it seemed to still do that after I repaired the earth. So, further investigation, I pulled our sender unit out. This is our oil pressure sender unit, and it was covered in PTFE tape. Now this type of sender relies on the earth through the threads. So with PTFE on it, it's actually insulating it and not helping. We don't need PTFE on this type, as this is a tapered thread. So as we wind it up, it goes tighter anyway and will actually become oil tight. So first thing I did was remove the PTFE, and then once it's out, I'm actually going to test this now, make sure that it works on the bench correctly. So we can do that by using an ohms meter and testing the resistance, but we can also set up a little test rig with a pipe and a Schrader valve, apply pressure, and then a known pressure, for instance, so I've got a little pump up valve I can use, apply 1 bar of pressure and make sure that our reading on the dash is pretty similar. I'll show you how I did that. Here we have our sender unit, our oil pressure sender unit, and we've got a little bit of pipe here. Now this is just like an 8mm fuel hose, and in this end we've got like a car tyre Schrader valve and a little hose clip to keep that in place. A hose clip this end. So all I'm going to do is pop this onto here, like so. And then do up our hose clip so it can't leak or fly off. Again, we're not going to put mega pressure into this, but we just want to check that the actual sender unit is changing in resistance whilst we're applying pressure. There we go, that should be tight enough. Right, awesome. Next we're going to apply a little bit of pressure through our Schrader valve. So I've got a little hand pump actually that I'm going to use, but you could use like a tyre pressure gauge and just put a little tiny bit in at a time. We're now connected up with our pump that we've got this end, so this is going to apply a little bit of pressure into this tube here, and also I've got P to the meter to read our ohms. So, and I've got a handy assistant over there who's going to give me a little pump. So if you could give me 1 bar please. So 1 bar of pressure, which we're at now, perfect, and the meter is flying between 20 ohms to 30 something. That's not quite right. Okay. Suspect. Okay, let's have a little bit more pressure then, please, assistant. 1.5 bar. 1.5 bar is a little bit more stable, actually. Still jumping around a bit. It's a bit strange. Okay, give it 1 big pump, then let's see what we've got. What are we up to now? 3 bar? And it's sort of stabilised a bit better. Okay, so lower down it's a bit weird. Okay, so I think the next test is we pop it on the car. Again, we put 1 bar of pressure in it and see what the gauge on the dash is doing. I've got our oil pressure sender wired back up, and I'm touching the body to earth, because again that's how it earths through the body of the actual sender itself. And we've got 1 bar? Yeah, 1 bar, 1.03 bar. And as you can see, I can see it from here, that the actual gauge on the dash is pretty irregular. So we've definitely got a problem with this sender unit, as we saw that the resistance was flailing around all over the place, which in turn makes our dash gauge do strange things. So not only did we have problems with the actual oil pressure sender itself, I did a little sneaky oil pressure test just to see what we had, and it was actually under a little bit below par. So taking a further look, I've removed the relief valve to give that a good clean and make sure that was operating correctly. It seems fine now. It was a little bit gummed up, so we've improved that. But also, take this opportunity, the only other thing I can do externally is to take a look at the oil pump. I took the oil pump apart and did some measuring and actually found the oil pump quite warm. So we fitted a brand new oil pump, so that's good. All we need to do now is get the oil strainer on, get some oil in it and see how much improvement we've got. Oil pump's in, all our tinware's back together. So next, obviously because we've drained all the oil out, we're going to put a lovely brand new flying saucer in. So the conclusion for our oil pressure gauge is that the sender's a bit iffy. So we do need to find a replacement sender. As you saw, at sort of low pressure, 1 bar, 1.5 bar, the gauge is waggling all over the place. As we increase the pressure, it becomes more stable. So it's definitely just the sender that needs replacement. So we need to get on the hunt for one of those. So thankfully we had a vast improvement on oil pressure. So that's good news. So it was pretty much all down to that oil pump itself being quite warm. When I measured it, it was way out of spec. And then on closer inspection, the actual impeller, the parts that actually moved together to create the oil pressure, were quite worn actually. So we popped a new pump in. I say popped a new pump in. It's not always that easy to get the old pumps out. But with the correct tool, it makes a massive difference. So I have struggled in the past trying to lever these pumps away from the body of the engine before we can get a better lever bar behind them to remove them. But obviously you've got to be very careful you don't damage either the engine or the pump body if the pump body is going back in. But this special tool, super easy. So all you need to do is take the drives out of it. So you take our impeller gears out, like so. And one of these, look at that. What that does, that magic little bar goes into our oil pump here, across to basically the oil feed holes, so the oil that comes into the pump and then the exit part of the oil pump. We use those two holes. Then this part of the tool is then pushed up against the body of the engine, and as we do our nut up there, it actually withdraws the oil pump from the engine. Really simple, really easy. And the first time I used one, and my God, that made my life a lot easier. Further investigation, I found that the distributor clamp itself, it's quite distorted and out of shape. It looks like it's been over tightened. So I'm going to straighten that up in the vise and see if we can repair that and get that sitting around the distributor and clamp it into its correct position. But our distributor clamp should now, yeah, it sits flat now, so it will hold that distributor in the right place. Stop it wobbling about, hopefully.
Hey Mark, how's it going? How's the Beetle coming on?
Ah, hey Nick. All right, actually, yeah. I'm just popping on a new distributor cap and rotor arm because it had that. Do you remember the funky clear thing it had? Yeah, so I've got rid of that. It's pretty good, yeah. I think we're ready to give it back to him. Obviously, I went through the charging side as well because I did find a funny earth, and I thought that was the cure for our gauge mucking about, but actually it wasn't, unfortunately. But it made the charging much better, and we've just fitted a nice new fan belt to it as well. So we've got a good fan belt on there now, the right tension, fresh oil, distributor cap and rotor arm done, a general look over. So I think we're ready to give it back to him.
Yeah?
Yeah, to do some testing himself then, can't he? Get some miles in it and enjoy it, I think, doing it. As he's enjoying himself, loving driving his Beetle, I think, isn't he? And chomping at the bit to get back out there. So I've done my bit. Let's get him back out there.
Should we go grab him?
I think we'd go and get him, yeah. He's probably quite excited. So Lewis, all ready for the weekend? Get out there, enjoy it, and I'll see you next week. So that's Lewis out in his Beetle. Hopefully he's going to really enjoy that this weekend, and then we'll catch up with him next week. So that's episode 2 done. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.